Today is Saturday, March 7th, 2026, and today is the Building Hour Episode 3. We are going to be reviewing the base called the Vantix, which is a trio to small group, so 3 to 5 player base, designed by a builder named, I don't know if it's pronounced Nini or Nini or Nini, one of those three. I always go with Nini, but that's probably not right. But if you know the correct pronunciation, you can correct me in the comment section when this is uploaded on YouTube. If anyone is in the Twitch chat could also correct me, that would be helpful. But yeah, by Nini Rust. They're a fantastic builder. This base is a really cool one. It's actually what inspired the Gram. The full base is quite different from this base. But it uses the same footprint, and the footprint is something I want to take a special look at today because I think it's really important to look at whatever footprint a base is using, because a footprint decides so much about what you can do. How symmetrical is your footprint? How many axes of symmetry can you create out of it? How large of a base are you going to need? Does it support honeycomb? There are some footprints that support honeycomb much better than others. Some bases are really incompatible with good honeycombing and symmetry at the same time. Like a 2x1 is actually 2x1 and 2x2 are great examples of bases that are not so good at being symmetrical and easy to expand with honeycomb, because the airlock pops out of the side of that 2x1, and so you can learn a lot of information from looking purely at the footprint. So we're going to start off looking at this because the Ninja Star footprint, which is what I'm calling the central starting core of this footprint, is a really cool one that I don't think a lot of builders explore with right now. And yeah. And before I get into the base review, I kind of wanted to tell you guys about my morning, because I was playing some Deep Sea and I learned a lesson the hard way. And I think it's important to share with you guys because many of us are trying out the Deep Sea right now. And I have a couple of boat designs, and I like to play the Deep Sea. It's a lot of fun. And so I learned a lesson, and I think it's important for all of us so that you don't have to make the same mistake I made. And so this morning, it's 8:15 a.m. I had woken up, fed my cats, and I was sitting down to start working on a video. I'm working on the next entry in the first entry in my tutorial series for how to build better bases, so stay tuned for that. But so I sit down, I've got my coffee, it's 8:15, and I'm about to start recording some scenes for the video, and while I'm loading up my local server so I can get the cinematic shots and do all the fun sorts of jazz, debug mode and whatnot, I'm like, you know what? I should check to make sure we didn't get raided. So I hopped onto the server while I'm waiting for mine to pop up that me and two of my buddies are playing on right now. And as I get into the server, I'm like, okay, great, we didn't get raided. But I checked the map to see if the Deep Sea was open, because we were running it last night and it was a lot of fun and I wanted to go back. And so I checked the map and I see 2 hours and 59 minutes, 30 seconds. And so I immediately shut down the server. And if you might be wondering why I shut down my server, it's because the Deep Sea just opened 30 seconds before I logged on. And so I immediately took a kit from our base, ran down to the boat, and drove out to the Deep Sea. And so I spent about an hour and a half around the Deep Sea. If you're completely unfamiliar with the Deep Sea, Rust released a patch, let's see, in February, where they added player-made boats to the game, and so you can build a boat base. It's kind of like a weird version of a land base if you consider it that way, but if you consider it its own entity, like they make sense and they're really cool. But you can drive around, you can enter this, like, it's an event-based area of the map that only opens up for 3 hours at a time, a few times a day. And if you can get out there right at the start, the loot is just completely unmatched. on the islands you can farm 6,000 sulfur, or I think it's like 10 or 12,000 metal ore just from a single island. So, and that's without any ortiz or anything like that. You can double that if you bring the right stuff. And so, and that's not even getting towards all the airdrops and the ghost ship loot, but the loot out there is just, it's absolutely insane. It's going to get patched, or sorry, it's going to get nerfed. It's just way overtuned right now. It makes sense on a really populated server because you're splitting the loot a lot of ways and the fighting is really intense. But if you log on 8:15 in the morning like I did, there's nobody out there. There was like 50 people on the server. Everyone was asleep. It's Saturday morning. And so I'm just going around from island to island and just sipping my coffee. And after about an hour and a half, I'm like, okay, I've got just about all I can carry. I'm going to just go home. And this is where I made my mistake. And so I'm driving home. And as I'm driving home, I see another player, another person at 8:15 in the morning. I guess it's 9:45 now, but at 9:45 in the morning, taking a ghost ship. And what this means is they are on a ship and not on their boat that they brought there. And so I decide, well, I may as well try to sink their boat. I have a lot of cannonballs. And so I took one of my 60 cannonballs that I had and loaded up my cannon and just started blasting his boat. And this was going great. I get like 15 shots off before the player even realizes I'm there. And then there's some scientist boats patrolling around and they kind of get in on the action and, mess around with him. And it's going well for me. But then, like, this guy, as soon as he was able to, like, not worry about the scientists and start focusing on me, he was an incredible player. All I can say is, like, he had a Glock pistol. I don't know what it's actually called in the game, but it's called the prototype. It's a 3-round burst pistol, and apparently it is as accurate as a sniper rifle because he was just hitting me over and over and over as I'm trying to shoot this cannon. So, like, when you go to shoot a cannon, you have to sit on the back and you light the fuse and it kind of goes down and then it shoots. And then you gotta reload it and there's like this whole animation. Well, if you ever hop off of the cannon during any part of that, it cancels the shot or the reload. But if you get shot in the head and die, that also cancels the reload. So I'm trying to balance between not dying because you can't move when you're holding the thing, and then this guy trying to kill me and me wanting to sink his boat. And we go back and forth, a few minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and eventually I'm completely out of meds. I have no cloth, so I can't craft more bandages. I'm out of food. I'm out of meds. What I should have done is I should have just left. My boxes were full. Even if I looted, even if I sunk his ship and killed him, there's nothing I can pick. I couldn't have looted more than what I can fit on my back. But I had invested so much into trying to kill this guy. I was like, I really need to sink him. And so I kept trying to sink him, and then all of a sudden, I died. And so I respawned, as you can do because you have the bed. And in the time that I was dead, he boarded my boat. Now, with the Cutter V3, I have an entrance in the front of the boat that can get me onto the main deck. But he had boarded my boat and was in that area. But I also have a rear entrance that just dips into the water. And so I'm like, okay, perfect. I knew this might happen, and I have a strategy prepared. And so I go to the locker and I put on my scuba kit, or I thought I put on my scuba kit, and I dive into the water with grenades and a spear gun. If you didn't know, you can actually throw a grenade from in the water onto a boat. And so if you've got an open-topped boat, like my boat is, I can swim underneath the boat and throw a grenade up on top and surprise someone who's boarded your boat and kill them that way. And so that's what I had planned, because they can't shoot you back into the water, and I have my spear gun, so if he joins me in the water, he's in for a unpleasant surprise. And so I'm underwater, and I start throwing grenades. And, you know, I don't know if I'm hitting him. I can hear him jumping around and running and trying to dodge the grenades. And then all of a sudden, my screen is turning red, and I look down, and I'm dying because I have no oxygen. Because the oxygen tank was not in my character's backpack slot. And so I die because I have no oxygen. I guess what had happened is when I put the suit on, it didn't transfer the oxygen kit, because, you know, you can like hit you know, it's H on my keyboard, but you can drag to loot, and if you hold Alt, it puts it on. And so it put my diving gear on, but for whatever reason, that the diving kit, or sorry, the diving tank that gives me oxygen if you're underwater, didn't attach itself. And so I die, and now I'm on a 5-minute bag timer because there was only room for 2 beds in the boat, and so I had to have a sleeping bag instead. And as I'm waiting to respawn, the other player throws 4C4 onto my boat. And if you don't know much about boats, C4 does 500 damage a hit. My boat has less than 2,000 health, and so my boat was sunk. And so, alas, the Cutter V3 sank to the bottom of the deep sea, along with 6 barrels worth of loot, including 30,000 sulfur. And so today's lesson is, if you're out of meds and you don't have good respawns, just go home. You don't need to sink the boat that you just happened to find on your way home. If you have a goal in Rust, just stick to it, because you will lose everything more often than not if you try to push your luck. And so, before we get into the review, I wanted to talk about that because, yeah. Hey, Wipe Dessert, good to see you. Okay, so now I want to get into the review of this base. And so what we've got today, this is the Vantix by Nini Rust. Once again, I don't think it's that. The Builder Sanctuary code, this will be in the description, and I will try to link the base. I don't know if YouTube allows me to link other videos from other people, but I'm going to try. The Builder's Sanctuary code is ODCYPU. It is a trio to small group base, and I think that is the correct size group for this size of base. Now, the listed cost is 95,000 metal and 65,000 stone. I don't think that is accurate, personally. The reason being is the base we looked at on Thursday, the Rat's Keep, that base, which is a solo base and considerably smaller than this one. Oh, sorry, let me switch scenes back to Rust. I should have switched back. Okay, now we're on the right scene. Yeah, the Rat's Keep, that is a solo base, considerably smaller. There's some inefficiencies there, but that was 60,000 stone and 85k metal. So only 10,000 less metal, and this base is large. Like, this base is too big for me to be able to play with it on a real wipe. I would only really be able to build it if I was playing a little bit deeper than I usually do. And so, yeah, I don't think that build cost is accurate. It might be because some of the deployables aren't registering. When I go with the cost function on Builder Sanctuary, which is notoriously buggy, but useful when it works, this says it is 140,000 metal. That sounds pretty accurate, but the upkeep isn't correct, because I know this base costs more than 2.9k metal. And I don't know what the issue is with that. It might be because... So this was designed on the old Builder Sanctuary. This was a 2.0. And it was transferred over to Builder Sanctuary 3.0. And sometimes the metadata, or like how the TCs are saved, gets a little messed up. And so if you're ever looking at older builds, not even that old, like January, this base is January 28, 2026 is when it was released on YouTube. So any base older than about 2026 is going to have some weird funky stuff when you load it into Sanctuary. But yeah, so the first thing I want to do with this base is take a look at the foundation. Oh yeah, I go here, features, just making sure it's all popping up. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to wipe the foundation because I just want to look at that first. And so, looking at the foundation, we've got the, as I call it, the ninja star footprint, which is where you have this central Dorito triangle, but then it seems asymmetrical because you're only extending out to one side. Like, see here, we're extending out to one side. And we leave this gap open. This is a fantastic footprint for three-sided symmetry wall stacking. And so what do I mean? If you're unfamiliar with wall stacking, it is where you get this like very small gap, and what you can do is you have walls offset like this, right? And why would you do that? That leaves gaps in your base. That seems silly. They're a little less obvious if I switch over to a different building material skin. It's like for that, for example, that's a smaller gap, but there's still a bit of a gap. Why would you want to do this? Well, something really cool you can do is you can open, you can create a bunker that you can open with this triangle roof piece using this trick. So why can't you just do this normally? Well, if we have, let me come over here. Normally what happens if you have, okay, what normally happens is if you've got a wall next to another wall, these sockets connect to each other, and the condition, like the roof won't open this up. Over here, the socket isn't attached, and so you'll see that this drops down. What's cool about a wall stack, and this is why I use wall stacking in pretty much every single base I build, is because you can now create a bunker like this. And so, say this is completely closed off, you have no way to access this, no doors, no nothing, just solid metal all the way around. You can now open this with just twig, and then break it. And so, I love these bunkers, they're so good. And what this base does by having three-sided symmetry and this this offset, this wall stack, as it's called, it sets the base up for being incredibly good at offline raid defense already. The other cool thing about the Dorito footprint is it's primarily a triangles footprint. As you can see, the way she has this base laid out is entirely with triangles until we get out to this layer. And that is actually how I made the gram. I went with entirely triangles, and then here, instead of a single square, I went with 2 squares out, because I wanted to put bedrooms there. But yeah, so I largely borrowed this footprint from Nini Rust because I saw this base come out. One of my friends sent it to me, and like, this base was just so cool. And yeah, so now that we've taken a look at the footprint, I guess one thing other to observe before we move on to the full base is, in my opinion, there is a lot going on out here. You know, I see a whole lot of foundations dedicated to the compound, and so without even seeing the compound at all, I feel like it's probably a little bit overbuilt. Now, if you're going with like a group of 5 or 6 that this base is intended to hold, this probably isn't a big deal. Same if you're playing on a 2x, but if you're playing on a vanilla server as a 3, like as a trio, even if you're dedicated, I feel like this compound needs to be scaled back a little bit, because, you know, right now we're looking at potentially 6 TCs. I think she talks about how you can disconnect this and use an external TC. I can't remember. Yeah, so normally this would be the wall stack, and so you would need an external TC. She actually connects it back using a triangle right here, because you can do a thing Yeah, where if you build on the main footprint and you build a triangle back, that will actually socket into it, and so you don't need 6 externals. So that's a cool thing that she utilizes here with the wall stack. But then she also has these wide gaps, and so wide gaps, just by how they have to be upkept by an external TC, and so that is how that is done. There is actually a trick where you can connect wall stacks directly to a wide gap, and so you can have in the same layer, you could have it be wall stacked and wide gapped, but you can't do it and offset it like this. But that's just something to point out, is that I think this base could be done cheaper, and that's actually where I got the initial idea for the Gram, is I wanted to make a much cheaper base using this footprint. Yeah, and so now that we've covered that, I want to start getting into the looking at the base itself. Just going to paste that in, finalizing. And I'm just going to open all the doors, because I like to open the doors when I review bases, because it's hard to see if a bunch of doors are closed. Although I do like keeping all of the doors so I can see which doors the creator, designer thought were necessary, because they're important in the cost. And so we've got a simple disconnect design. This is one that was popular. So this base was made in January. Now in March, they've actually brought back the old disconnectable design. So you should likely just use a Sartori external disconnectable, which is where you have the 4 frames, and you build back with foundations, and you build the roof on the floor. Like you build back, and then you can connect with the roof, and it will break the build back. So you should just use that, because that's the best. It's back. But this is a neat one. It lets you build up to 2 doors, so you could have 2 garage doors and a single door. So this ends up being a 7 rocket protected, which is, I think, all you need in an external. Some people make their externals like 15 rocket raids, and it's like, if you make your external 15 rocket raid, but then you don't also make the entire build back, and then your entire compound, and then your entire way it connects back to the main base, if that's not also 15 rockets to raid, a raider's just going to break the cheapest part of the link. And so 7 is all you need. Sometimes I like to add stone honeycombing, because stone is really cheap. It's so easy to add stone to a external that I'll add it so that it's closer to 11 rockets. Maybe you get a silly raider who decides to do that. It also makes online raid. So sometimes what happens in an online raid is raiders will take one of your externals, they'll raid into it first to help let them build a raid base closer and start to... there's a concept called sieging in Rust. I don't actually understand how it works. It is very complicated, but the gist of it is it's a way to progress your building privilege closer and take over portions of the other player's base or the defender's base with building privilege, and it takes advantage of how overlapping TC privilege works. And I'm sure there's some simple heuristics to understand it better, but I just haven't looked into it. Yeah, someone in the chat is saying, I think you can connect the whole base to a single TC. Yeah, I think that might be possible here, but you definitely wouldn't want to. The upkeep would be god-awful if you did that. But it is possible. And so, yeah, all that to say is we've got a disconnectable, and yeah, all you need is 7 rockets, so I really appreciate this. There's no wastedness out here. Now moving in, I think all of this is upgraded to sheet because it's just the save on Builder Sanctuary. In the video, there's parts that are stone, and so I would imagine this part of the compound should be stone. You might want to keep the roof and a single bit for stability, so that, you know, a raider won't raid that. But you don't need to upgrade your gatehouse to metal, especially if there's not beds and kits in here. And since there's no beds and kits, this definitely would have all been stone. And I think I remember it being stone. This is a really cool feature that I wanted to try and incorporate. And I couldn't quite do it right outside the gatehouse, but it's something that I'm trying to fit into some of my compound designs. I love, and I think there's a base that just came out by Hidden Joint that also has something like this. If anyone's door camping you, you just pop up here and take care of them. Or hop up here. Because a lot of the gatehouses have great visibility, but you have no way of dealing with the door camper other than opening the door and hoping for the best. Or getting your buddy up on a roof and hoping that they have a good enough angle. But often, you can't really see that well. And so having these little pop-outs that have angles back into the, back onto your door, that just simplifies things. And I think that's really, really cool. Now, this base was listed as having a sea wall, SEA wall, like the type of thing that would block waves, as opposed to a shield wall. And I wanted to talk about that because that was a point of what we talked about in the Rat Keep. And so the Rat Keep had one of the best shield walls I've ever seen. And this is a pretty good sea wall. I think visibility-wise, this is a fairly open compound. And so in an online raid, say I get a raid base and I'm about this tall, someone up on top with a sniper rifle or M2 does have decent visibility into this compound. It's not fantastic, but this is a very reasonable height for a major raid base, and so if they build it in the right spot, they can get a lot of visibility over this compound. That's why I've been seeing a lot of very tight compounds, as tight as possible. I like this bed. That's a cool respawn. I don't think it's worth adding these I see. These are holding up the Y gap, so you do need all of that. This might be redundant. Like, that's a bit of hyper optimization, but you could remove those. You could even remove that one and then connect with a frame like that. That's both cheaper and you can't soft side it, so I think that's actually what I would do. And can you remove this? Yeah, you could even remove that one. And so that gives you less redundancy if somebody starts blowing here, or blowing down low. You have less redundancy, and what I mean by that is if they blow this frame out, you might start losing some of the peaks up top. Yeah, you start losing some of the peaks up top, whereas if you have this foundation here, this would take over for the stability. And so that's up to you. If you're trying to hyper optimize, you can play around with not having as many foundations. Yeah, see, so like if that blows out, the peak stays because it transfers over to this. In this case, I would probably leave this stone rather than sheet metal. And that kind of strikes a balance between being a backup. Now, at this point, like if this one blows out and the raider is splashing right there, both of these are going to break anyways, and then you might lose the peaks. But yeah, so I think this could have been optimized just a little bit more in the compound, but it doesn't matter most of the time if you're running deeper on a 2x. And so what's the difference between a seawall and a shield wall? So a seawall, like this, is where you're using objects like a furnace, and players are not necessarily, they can't get through, but they could blow through with like something like this. And a shield wall is where it's a little bit more solid. Usually you don't use chain link when you're trying to accomplish a shield wall, because the goal of a shield wall is to block rockets in an online raid. So if you're getting online raided, let me go to stone, you would just spam walls down. And honestly, this base isn't called a shield wall base, but it absolutely very well could be a shield wall base if these barricades were a little different. So, like, if these barricades aren't there, and this furnace is placed a little bit further out, you can actually put down an entire shield wall. And so you can build up like this, and if these two had a half wall right there, you know, you could just boom, 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 boom. And yeah, once again, the barricades are a little bit in the way. Oh, you could even, like, say there was a frame here. Yeah, you can just boom, boom. And so that's what a shield wall is being able to spam walls down, so someone who's pummeling from a raid base over here would be hitting those walls instead of your walls. And it's a convenient technique that you can use to help protect your base in an online raid, especially when you're outnumbered. Some builders, or sorry, some players really like to have that as an option in their bases. And so, yeah, this base very well could just have a shield wall if you place the barricades a little bit differently. And so I think if you just make sure that your barricades are towards the front, that leaves this inner ring right here available for shield wall. And same here. And so I personally may, like, I would try and get it on each one of these triangles, like that, and then the same over here, and then same on this one. And I would use the triangles in the front half rather than the triangles back here. And we've got auto turrets covering. There's a lot of auto turrets out here. You're only allowed up to 12 on vanilla servers, and so you wouldn't be able to place all of those, because I think there's an open core in this base, and with open core, you have to use auto turrets to cover that. And so if there's already 12 out in the compound, I think that means there's at least 15 to probably 20. Yeah, we have 3 auto turret pods up here. These are the really cool auto turret pods that if you can fit on your base, you really should, because they're just so good. But we're not to the roof yet. Okay, so in here we've got an entry module. This is a really cool one. You've got kind of these sideways angles, and I think these are meant to be horizontal embrasured. I don't know if you go inside or outside on these ones. I think it's inside. And so you can put a box there to peek from, or you can stand back here. Probably shouldn't use a shotgun for this, but you can get a cool angle out there. I'll go AK. And then silencer. I like to throw the silencers on so I don't deafen you guys when I shoot the guns. Yeah, you can get a really good angle out through there. Yeah, inside is the correct way to go with this. I know Wipe Deserg was showing me, honestly, a very similar kind of module. Yeah, this is really, really cool. So I like that. This is really cool if you can have it. And then this is room you can put a shotgun trap in some boxes. And so you'll notice it's very dark. In the most recent patch, Rust made it so you can't turn off a lot of the shadow features and did some more light stuff. And so the inside of bases will now just, as a default, be much more dark, which means people who are good at lighting will make much cooler bases going forward. But yeah, so this is kind of the second floor deployable space that you move around. There's 3 of these bunkers, or drop-down spaces, that I think are really cool. So you go down. This would be a great spot for an armored ladder hatch when those eventually come out in sometime this year. And then we go into, let me switch my build grade. We have 3 of these bunkers that use that wall stack trick that I was talking about earlier. And so you've got a large battery spot, and this is honeycombed by 3 layers of walls. And so these are some of the most secure bunkers I have ever seen in a build. Like, if you put loot into those bunkers, it is not getting got for less than 25 rockets a bunker. I mean, actually, right now, since the floor isn't set to armored, it would be... the cheapest way to raid this would be to come through doors, presumably come through a garage door, yep, a second garage door, a third garage door, and then just go straight down into that loot room. So that's 9 plus 2, so 11 plus 7, so that's 18 rockets. Yes, 18 rockets to get into this bunker if you know where you're going. And incidentally, that would actually get you into the core. And so I think you absolutely need to have all of this armored. And personally, I wouldn't use this as a 2 triangle loot room right there. See how this is offset? There's a bit of loot room here, and this is one of the bunkers. Well, if somebody comes up through here, through door path, which is a fairly common thing to do in an offline raid, especially when you see a base that might have bunkers like this, it's fairly common to come up through here. And if they recognized, so if you as the raider say there's a ladder hatch here, or even there's no ladder hatch, and you realize, oh, there's no door right here, that's offset. This is probably a roof bunker or a wall stack. And then they would realize, oh, wait a second. This kind of looks like where that bunker is. Let's just blow right here. And now they have your core. So they're into your main loot. Although there's an open core in this base, so you might be intended to move all of your loot out of here, in which case that doesn't matter. But I think just what should be done is, if you are setting up a double triangle loot room up here, you should carry this wall down, and you should just sacrifice that spot. Because now, if raiders blow this out, they don't get access to your core and this bunker at the same time. Because you're investing, 3 layers of walls to protect this bunker from the side. And so if you're investing so much resources to protect it from a side raid, you don't want to have a cheaper raid path possible. You want to try and balance the raid paths. Especially since very rarely will somebody who's offline raiding you pummel. They're almost always going to find a targeted, very precise attack through door path, and then try and find the right way to get directly onto the TC or directly up into a loot room. And so that's one thing I would maybe look at changing here. Definitely armoring this floor. I can see that this was armored. I don't know if that was just for thumbnail purposes or anything like that. Because I think she does cuts the footprint out to show. And I don't see anywhere else armored in this space, so I don't think this is upgraded to build grade. But I would definitely have at least over the bunkers and the core upgraded to armored. And then I might add that wall in. And so, getting back into the core, yeah. It appears that right here is intended as a TC. I think it's supposed to be, and it just didn't spawn in. Can't sack building privileges. I would have to disconnect the externals. Oh yeah, I forgot to show. You break this, and the stability drops that out. And then you just replace this twig, and then you can connect it back. Yep, and then that breaks. But anyhow. So yeah, I think it's intended the TC to go down here. I don't think you move it up higher. But yeah, let's move on up. And so there's 3-sided mobility throughout the base. Let's see, this is kind of like a cool pathway. It makes the door path on the way up to the open core fairly long. I don't love that jump. You would definitely want ladder hatches there. Yeah, that's kind of awkward of a jump to make. You can definitely do it, but you have to, like, shift, jump, and crouch as you're jumping and then in the air. So if you don't have a lot of hours, that's kind of hard to do successfully. And so coming up, we're all the way up high, getting to this open core. And this is a really proper big open core, at least as someone who only works with really small bases. I don't think you're supposed to use binds. You can do auto crouch true. I don't know if that helps with that specific jump, because you need to get the momentum of sprinting, but then you need to be crouched height. So it's like if you, like, see where I'm running forward and I'm crouching mid-air, but trying to maintain, there's like a frame where you need to maintain the sprint momentum as you're switching to the crouch, but your feet have left so it doesn't apply the slow. And so you have to do that type of thing to make that jump. So it's just a little awkward. This open core is really cool. The boxes were here, but it looked like they despawned because of me loading it in, presumably. All of these are projected by garage doors. This is really neat. And then up here were turrets. There was 1, 2, 3. And then, let's see. That doesn't quite give you an angle in. Do you get an angle if you step back here? No, you don't quite get an angle there. I'm trying to figure out why. Oh, I see. You can drop down and then look at the open core from up here. So if anyone's in here, you can evict them. And so you drop down from up here. And this is looks like the shooting floor. You've got some, like, drop downs, lots of angles, all sorts of angles. I don't like, you know, that's not bad, but my favorite part of using these door peaks like this is you can get a really nice angle looking straight down by stepping to the edge of it. And with this as a frame like that, although I guess you just get this wide gap angle instead, and that's probably just as good as this. And so this is intended as like a backup angle, and you drop grenades down, like if you toss a grenade right there. Yeah, that's probably what that's intended for. That's pretty cool. So I like having something like that. Let's see, more wide gap. There's so much visibility down on the base. So wide gaps are so cool. I really need to get better at utilizing them because you get just so much visibility straight down. It's really impossible to be up against a base and like push on ground without somebody covering the shooting floor from a raid base. Like, it requires a big team to handle this. This, I imagine, may at one point have been a Brutalist peak, and now, because, yeah, if this was back when Brutalist still worked, this is where you could put that like that, and you would get this really, really cool angle. That was a little bigger than this. Technically, you could still shoot out and get a little bit of an angle, but it's so limited that it's not worth using this as a peak anymore. Yeah, so I like this shooting floor. You know, it might be okay, so for this size base, it is definitely not overbuilt. I think this is adequately built, or the right size. This base is touted as a trio base, and as a trio base, I think this is overbuilt. At least this shooting floor. It's a lot to upgrade and maintain, and there's a lot of spots that are kind of open like this, and so raiders could jackhammer out a few spots if they're left as stone and really make the raid cost cheaper. Let's see. Like, yeah, they technically can't get through this gap, but if you leave any of this not upgraded to metal, they can come right here, jackhammer that out, and now they have access pretty easily to a decent part of your shooting floor. But once again, any base that has this tower anywhere, like, you take 3 triangles, you make a half hexagon, throw it on a base, I automatically love your base. I just love castles, and yeah, it's just so much fun. This is a good peak. I would want this to be fob protected, personally. And what do I mean by that? I just mean that. The only downside is if you do too much, you might obstruct the angles of other peaks. Yeah, so it's nice having so many peaks, but what you run into when you start layering too many is that peaks, to protect them from raid bases. And so I'm out here, I've got my M2, and I've got my 8X. You want to make sure that when I'm up here, I can't just shoot out your head. So like if you're using this peak, I'm just holding you, and I can just do that. Or if I'm really good, you know, laser you, but I can't do that. So you would protect this with, you know, fob protection, as it's called, or forward operating base protection. So now I can't see in, but you as the defender, you know, your visibility is not obstructed on ground, and you as the defender, you're trying to make sure that the raider who's trying to get to your base with rockets to blow it up or whatever, you kill them, and then you get down on ground, grab their loot, seal your compound, and bring their explosives in so that they no longer have the explosives. You're not trying to fight with this guy. That's a losing battle every time. They're setting up peaks specifically to make sure that you can't access your own peaks. And so a lot of these peaks don't have any sort of head protection. And so what I personally would rather is I would have less peaks, not a lot less, but I would have a couple less peaks, and then I want them head protected. Because I don't think it's your job to try and kill the M2 player from your shooting floor. I think, you know, you might want to make a play from like the back half of your compound or up on your roof, but I don't think you want to leave these open, because most of the time you're looking down and they're looking at you. You want to be only looking head on head if that was the case. Yeah, Wipe Deserg is saying you can still make Brutalist Peaks with any skin with a minimal build out. Yes, with a minimal build out, but when designing a compound, it personally, I don't think it's worth the effort of that build out, because it forces you into a certain shape and certain types of peaks. For the benefit of a Brutalist Peak, when you can go with something like this, or you can even do something like here. You can do something like that, where you're fob protected, and then you can play off of like this angle, like that. And so you can set it up so that if you're back here a little bit, you know, something like that, where it's like, it's not quite as good as a Brutalist, but it's pretty solid. And so I prefer to use that over going through all the effort of using the other way you can do a Brutalist. And I don't really know how to evaluate open cores that well. I've never actually played with a proper open core before. I know they're really helpful in larger groups. I don't think it's necessary for a trio, personally. Now, this base was listed as a 3 to 5 player. I think this is more of a 6-player base, personally. Like, I wouldn't consider building this unless I have 5 or 6 players. I would build something smaller. Yeah, so open core is cool. but I don't know how to evaluate it. I know it's important to have multiple layers of walls or honeycomb to reach it, and you definitely get that out of this. It is 2 walls plus some doors to get to this open core from any direction you come from, and so that's important. I see some bases where people are like, I built an open core, and it's literally an open core because you have 1 layer of wall protecting your open core from the outside world. And so if raiders put 8 rockets into that wall, you're done for. And if you armor it, that's even sillier. Yeah, so we've got our open core. I wish I knew where the bedroom modules are on this base. I can't see them because they didn't spawn in for some reason. But I imagine there's all sorts of beds up here in this spot, as well as maybe there's a bed on these ramps somewhere. This is definitely used for beds here. Oh, here. This is one of the peaks I really like. Like, I just love being able to pop out and shoot down. Like, it's not as protected as some other peaks, but it just gives you really good downward visibility, and you can toss grenades down. Oh, this is a bedroom right here. It's like kind of pseudo fob or head protected from that. I feel like that's actually... I wouldn't put this frame on the inside. It makes it... because you can't actually shoot... Oh, you can shoot out of it. Sometimes you run into an issue of being able to shoot out of this. This is a really OP peak if you get that angle. But it's kind of glitchy sometimes. You have to be perfectly centered on that. Yeah, once again, that's not fob protected. Now, this could be a really cool angle to, say somebody's out here. They might not think to look underneath. Usually you're looking kind of over. But, yeah, so overall, I think this is a really, really cool base. I love the footprint, of course. I went with it and made the gram off of it. Oh, I forgot to look at the roof. Let's see. I like that there are no exploitable gaps in the roof. Sometimes when you get like wall stacking, you have these gaps that raiders can sit on and just make your life hell when you're in the shooting floor, you know, just by shooting on in. But these are nicely covered up by these walls right here. Just some nice angles. Not super crazy, but like just nice. I really like this one right here. This is great. This is pretty open, but I personally would just put a window here. This isn't... Yeah, I would just put a glass window here because I don't want to get shot while I'm using this. And if I spot someone, I'm just going to hop here and make that peek rather than use the embrasure where I can get shot through at any time. I'd rather hop up, take my shot, and come back down. I think you could use that as a bedroom up here. Instead of... I guess that would force you to be... Yeah, you can't put that there, but you could do that. That would take away your vending machine spot, but you could use this as a bedroom up on the shooting floor. You could even do something like this and have it be kind of a retake. I don't know. Yeah. So overall, yeah, I really like this base. Footprint's really cool, and I think it's one... We have so many egg bases right now. If you want 3-sided symmetry, try out the Ninja Star. Especially if you're making a base smaller than 4, 5, 6 players. The Ninja Star will be really cool for you to try out. I think this base totally could have had a shield wall if you just put the these barricades down a little bit more efficiently, and then maybe swap this chain link out. It's really nice because it means that when you break open here and you start to come in, do I have symmetry on? When raiders start to come in, they will get shot by the auto turrets that are right there. But I feel like the added, like if you just went with a wall or something like that, or even a prison cell gate that takes a little bit more, because I think you can break chain link with HVs, but yeah. So really cool base. I think the compound is very cool. I like these like little angles to handle door campers. This bedroom is neat, but I don't know if it's totally necessary. I think there's some optimization that can be done to reduce the overall metal and upkeep cost without affecting anything of the base. Retake bedrooms. The core layout, if you just shift that one wall over, it makes it so that you can't splash the core and the bunker from above. And so I think you definitely should do that if you're building this base. You should just sacrifice that one extra spot of loot in that main core loot room so that they're not splashable, and you should definitely upgrade that to armored even if your loot is up top. Really awesome open core. I need to talk with some people who specialize in open cores to kind of figure out what they look for in open cores, because that is just an area I've never really explored as a solo duo trio player. You really have no business building an open core, but yeah, and so it's a really cool base. I think it can definitely be done for maybe 10% cheaper, 5% cheaper, and get most of the same functionality. There's a couple of extra peaks up on the shooting floor and roof. Like, I think you could do with less, and get all of the same angles you need, and then actually fob protect them, or protect the head. Like, if you... there's not enough stability on that, but maybe... I don't actually want to do that because now you can't see, but if you had enough stability, you could cover this up, and now this, where is it? Yeah, now this is a much safer angle. You're not going to get shot out by raiders, but, you know, it's not always possible to do that, but I think a couple less peaks and then protect the head. I think that would be a way to improve the shooting floor of this base, since most of the angles are not fob protected. But the downwards angles are absolutely filthy. I would not want to be the raider tasked with getting the boom to this base, because I am just getting mauled down by the players sitting right here. And so, yeah, that's my review of this base. If you are watching this on YouTube, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. And if you're on Twitch, feel free to ask any questions about this base, and I'm just going to kind of hang out and see what else we can do with the base. And so, I'll see you around.